Hey everyone, and it's great to be back for number 5 in our podcast series on scaling leadership and growing businesses. And it is a great delight today to actually have my longest standing client. Can you believe it?
No pressure.
This is Nick, and he's from a company called Aral, formerly Avant, and he's going to introduce himself and tell us all about it. And I've been waiting a long time to have him on my podcast, so it's a delight. Nick, thanks for agreeing to come and talk to me today. So
Absolute
I'm going to
pleasure.
throw the ball to you right at the beginning. Tell us, who is Nick? What do you do? And yeah, introduce us to Nick and Aral and Avantcore and all the good stuff.
According to my wife, I do tech fin, which I think is meant to be fintech. But anyway, so Dave, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the invitation. Yeah, so who am I? I am an engineer. So I did my engineering degree back in 2000, BSc, MSc engineering, ended up in automotive engineering. I spent 12 years of my life there, really working my way up from sort of a junior engineer to a senior engineer to an R&D manager to R&D exec, looking after a team of engineers, mechanical, electronic. And yeah, that was hard yards because I was pretty young at the time, 43 now. And then yeah, around about 2016, I just had a calling. It was, I don't know if I was tired of corporate life, but looking for a new challenge and decided to take a leap of faith into entrepreneurship. So it was 2016, 2017. I'd actually told my wife, I don't know if you know this, Dave, but in 2016, I said by my next birthday, it was my 30th. I said by my 30th, I want to resign. No, it couldn't be my 30th.
Wow.
It was on my 30th. I think that's about right. I want to resign and start something new. So yeah, I resigned from a decently paying job in a corporate institution, and yeah, I remember also saying like, I'm either going to end up on the cover of Forbes, which was probably a bit illustrious, let's be honest, or begging down and it's the corner down there at the bottom of Pine Town by the off ramp from Fields Hill. So that was like kind of the degree. So there's a massive in hindsight element of naivety, and I think that might be a theme through this. Naively optimistic around, just our trajectory. And yeah, I started
Be
the
careful
business.
what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. So that's me, also family life. So that's just sort of before we started this business that I'll park my work life there. And then, yeah, on the family front, I've been married many, many years. And you see, I'm stalling now to work out how many years. Luckily, my wife's not here. 2009. So yeah, many years.
Good recovery.
Yeah, good recovery. Yeah. And yeah, now I have 4 kids, which should add to the trauma of my startup journey. Yeah, a 6-year-old, 2 4-year-olds. Happy to throw twins in the middle of a growing business, and then a beautiful little 1-year-old girl. So 3 boys and a girl.
Amazing. So not only are you scaling your business, you're scaling your family. My goodness.
It's been ridiculously tough. Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, just having twins for anybody is enough. And then scaling your business. I was saying to you before we started recording is one of the things I've admired about Nick and the work is I would use words like tenacity and grit. And you have a tremendous belief in your product and what you've developed. And you have a tremendous belief also in yourself. And I think that's been infectious. I mean, I've been working with you for over 3 years now. In fact, we go back many, many years, even nearly a decade, I think. And I think that's always been true for you. Where does this come from? Where does this sense of belief and self-confidence and just, it's going to be okay? Where does that come from?
Dave, I don't know. And sometimes I wonder if it's just, I wonder if it is a strength, and I just haven't had lady luck on my side. But I think it's just in my core. I've always got sort of some kind of, not blatant, but, in the back of my head, I've got contingency plans. Not like major allocation of time to these things, but, you've got to do a risk reward kind of calculation on everything you do. And whilst, we've had some really rough times, and I've always felt at peace because I truly believe in what we're doing. I truly believe I've got my finger on the pulse of the industry we're in, which you haven't gotten to yet, but, where we position the team I'm blessed to work with, the product that we're building. Maybe sometimes the timing's not particularly right and, you go off on these sort of side quests. But yeah, I think I don't quite know how to answer that. I don't know if there's that naivety. I'm sort of grateful to have that naivety and then have a couple of backup plans. But I think you've just got to stay true to your vision and
Right.
just be constant and disciplined. And they must be slow to react, because that is a trait of mine, as you'll know. So I've got to be careful of that being a pitfall. But otherwise, I think I'm just grateful to have the support network that I have too. I think that's maybe another part of it, knowing that I have some
I love it.
flexibility to go wild. Yeah.
I also think that in the nature of founders, there is an innate sense of confidence. Somehow it's going to work out. There is a measuredness also that startup and founders have, and you clearly got that gene. Tell us about this fintech business of yours. What is it
Maybe
that
invite
you
my wife
do?
in to give you a summary.
Exactly.
That'd be fun. That'd be
So,
fun.
what is it that you're so passionate about, and how is it changing the world, or if not anyone, your world?
No, sure. So like I said, started 2016, 17, and it's the world of digital assets. And, it was a really, really new topic to mainstream media back in 2016, 17. Not new to the world, sort of 2011-ish coming into being. And it's just the concept of there being this alternative to being able to transfer value across borders, whereas before, and without intermediaries. So, instead of having to have an intermediary in order to transfer value from myself to yourself, aka FNB or Investec, whatever it is, the ability for me to interact directly with you peer to peer, and also just enabling a global sort of payments ecosystem. Similarly to how the internet, I truly believe, similarly to how the internet just opened up the average layman to be able to put his message out to the globe and set up, whatever messages he wanted to get out there. I believe that digital assets is going to really transform the way that people interact with each other financially. It's not going to replace fiat. They're going to come to loggerheads at some point. But so what we've done is we've essentially, over the last decade now, can you believe it, essentially built out a digital asset platform that enables institutions, so we're a B2B business, enables institutions to adopt digital assets into their current traditional financial businesses. So payments aggregators, payroll facilitators, asset managers, fund administrators, family offices, brokerages, all of those kind of financial institutions or corporates that are used to, moving pounds, euros, dollars, yen, whatever it is. They now need to, and I can say need to, like 3 years ago, it was still early. They're now recognizing they need to complement their existing business to keep up. And they're going to have their fiat portion of their business, their digital asset portion of the business. And, the trajectory that these two different types of money, if you will, are taking is it's fascinating. Every day is a roller coaster, and my receding hairline is looking worse and worse.
And mine.
Week on week. But I wouldn't want to be, you cheated. I don't know if I told you, Dave, recently I was considering shaving my head. And I thought, no, before I shave my head, I need to grow a beard. And then I started growing a beard, and it looked so atrocious. I was like, shit, that's not going to work. So I'm stuck with
Just turn your head upside down. Yeah, you don't shave your head, then you can grow a whole beard, right? That's if you hear nothing else on this podcast, that's your advice for the day. It is interesting because when you started this, the world was a different place, right? You could see something happening, right? But the acceleration of digitization, of course, AI coming into that, has, your future view has certainly come sharper now, right? So the need for your product is, instead of being a nice to have, it's becoming essential. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. But I mean, then also, maybe a lesson in this is that where we started and what we're building there, I must admit, we had the vision of where we are now, but we've gone through quite a winding journey to get to let's call it the product market fit. Our focus that we have right now. I mean, we actually started building out the product that we have now as a sort of global trading platform that we were leveraging to move value globally, take advantage of arbitrage, market inefficiencies. We're moving for ridiculously large amounts of value across various jurisdictions, to the tunes of billions of dollars. And I mean, that just formed the foundation for our current products and I mean, take a little bit of a step back. The complexity that we saw and we experienced firsthand in building this kind of digital asset engine that would allow you to bridge a liquidity provider to a blockchain wallet, to a blockchain, to a compliance platform. It was really difficult to glue this all together to do something. So we figured,
Mm.
institutions are going to need the same thing. So our business has evolved. And yes, we were actually, not before our time, but, we're really early to our current target clients. It was actually, strangely enough, maybe beginning of last year, where institutions actually started, kind of
Mm.
looking at
Well,
this technology.
takes
Yeah.
it takes time to really find the fit. You have an
Yes.
initial invention, an idea, you play with it, you test the market, you market tested a number of things. And, I think this is a good point to anyone starting a company, that, what you initially start with may not be the product you end with. And the target market you initially think of may not be where you end up, right? And there is this meandering journey that I know at times you feel lost through, but sometimes it is essential to finding out, where you are. I'm going to just push us on here because I want to talk about one of the implications of that meandering. And, I think it was a good process, by the way. So you've lived through the whole thing of startup cash and cash
Yeah.
flow and,
Yeah.
investing your own money into the business and, all of that goes with it. What has this taught you about resilience? Number one, decision making, and, what founders tend to romanticize about this startup life, right? Let's talk about your cash flow journey, because that is intrinsically linked to this finding the market fit and then, making money from your product. Talk to me about that.
So I mean, we've had sort of two or three instances in our timeline where we started to run out of money, and it's been rough. And I mean, the first time was, let's say, it wasn't a fault of ours, but we had some funds locked up, some complications there, and yeah, we actually at that point we needed to pivot some of our revenue lines. And that was a massive catalyst for us to launching a new product that generated some
Mm,
revenue. So that was a really positive, if I think about it, it was a massively positive experience because it sort of kicked our asses into gear. Then the second one was, I guess, sure, it was good, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. And yeah, that was really tough because we were coming out of like sort of a crypto winter. And we'd had a sort of operational mishap in the team. We'd lost a bit of bucks. And yeah, that was probably the hardest time in my life.
yeah.
So it must have been 4 years ago. I'll tell you why, because the
Yeah.
twins were born around then, which, that really,
I
I checked
remember.
out.
I remember that time. Yeah.
That was a really, really, really dark time in my life. And yeah, that involved us really, having some deep chats with some of the founders. And we had to work out who was still aligned with the business, who believed in the business, and what to do about that. Then also just staff. When do you make them aware? How do you make them aware? How do you
Mm,
paint a positive picture of the vision and what you
mm,
believe is in
mm,
the future, but also making it really real that, guys, listen, we need to tighten our bolts. We need to do some cost
mm,
saving. If we aren't able
mm,
to do X, and what is X? It's not like, if we
mm,
aren't able to do X, then, will we be willing to take some salary cuts? And yeah, I mean, resilience and grit. I think what got me through is, again, just really believing that I was on the right journey. I wouldn't want
mm,
to be in any other industry. I think it would be
mm,
really hard if you truly aren't passionate about what you're trying to build and believing that, you're in the right market and the right market
mm,
for you. It might not be the same thing. You might identify a massive opportunity, but you're like, it doesn't resonate for you, but it doesn't get you excited. Like tech gets me excited. Finance gets me
mm,
excited. Structure,
mm,
data,
mm,
all of those things come into fintech fin. So I think if you don't have that unwavering like core belief that you're in the right place with the right products and the right team, and also the team. I mean, like, it was amazing just knowing that I had some people on the journey with me. But it just, yeah, it was,
Yeah,
it
I
was, it
think
was rough.
what exudes out of you, Nick, again, is the word belief. You've got
Yeah,
to believe that, and you've got to be aligned with you love the space you're in, and I think that's a
yeah,
big part of this thing. You turn up because somehow you still love this stuff, even though it's really
yeah,
tough. I
yeah.
I think one of the things working with you has been interesting is that we had to realize that raising money was not just about capital, but it's about choosing partners who bring credibility and distribution and strategic leverage, right? And I know that, right now, there are now some partners looking in, institutional banks, etc. Perhaps tell us about this. Tell us about now how you view raising funds now.
So that's a really interesting one. I mean, it took me a very long time to not associate fundraising with failure, and that's a real journey that I've had to
Wow.
go through. And I think the catalyst for this was I went to a conference in I think it was in Paris, and I happened to meet one of the 7 co-founders, which was really interesting, for a company called Ledger. They manufacture a digital wallet, and there's there are two major wallets, through the last decade, Trezor and Ledger. And Trezor was my firm favorite, and they were doing amazingly well. And then Ledger sort of just started popping up on the radar more. I saw them in the Dubai airport. I thought they'd done really well. And I happened to bump into this guy. His name was Nikolai. And he had a couple of drinks, and I saw him at an after event. And I said to him, like, yes, you guys have done really well. And I didn't ask him how or why, whatever it is. And he said, you know what? The difference between us is Trezor didn't raise funds. Ledger went and actually raised funds, and that gave them the freedom. Oh, there's the freedom, but they gave them the runway and the breadth to sort of be more aggressive, make more aggressive decisions, and kind of just expand. And I remember hearing that and going, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially in the space we're in, is so fast paced that if you don't scale to grow and capture the market and the opportunity, you're probably going to have someone else that's raised money because he's not personally attached to whatever coming and overtaking you. So that was kind of where my relationship with the concept of fundraising changed.
Something that's so good. A couple of things you said there. First one, straight out the bat, you said you had to change your mindset. Raising money did not mean that you are failing. And then later you just said that attachment, you had to learn that you can't be so attached to something that you couldn't perhaps even give some of it away. I think those are powerful emotions, right? When you're a founder and it's your baby, asking for help for someone outside to come in and then maybe even give up a little bit of your control. Yeah. Challenging, right?
And all of that sort of weight does land on the CEO. It's fun for everyone to say, hey, let's raise some funds and let's expand. There's a real responsibility in raising funds because now you're accountable to these external parties that have trusted you with the funds. So it's a complete change in dynamic, but you'll know when it's the right time. As well, I don't know if you will. But I mean, for me, it suddenly became super clear, and I mean, it'll be really interesting if you were to look at our financials. I mean, sort of beginning of last year, we just started aggressively investing into the business. We carried on hiring. We started investing into our QMS, ISO 27001, which took us a year to get under the belt. SOC 2, also another one. Just positioning ourselves for this future without sort of waiting for this to happen before. There's this really complex battle between, like, I'll say, living for the moment and planning for the future, but kind of like that. Do you want to break even, or do you want to grow aggressively to make sure that you set up for success? When the regulations change or when the institutions really kind of come out of their shells. So I don't know. I think we've played it okay. I think there are a lot of things we could have done better, but it's been an evolution of us maturing as well. I mean, started the business 10 years ago, early 30s, now early 40s. It's all just learning.
You played it well. I really do. And I think it's a great point you make is the temptation is that we do everything for the now and we live in a very much now mindset. But you have brought in systems and QC and good governance and procedures that really deserving of a much bigger company, but you've decided to build those things in now. So when the company grows, it grows into them. And I think that's the mark of a really good founder, is somebody that builds the wineskin, the scaffolding, whichever frame you want to call it, for the finished article, not for just the now. Another thing about growing up, though, is learning that you need team. You need people around you, and that you are all unique people with your own unique. Now, you and I and your team have spent some time using Gallup Strength Finders, right? Now, you've got a founding partner with you, Jeff.
Yep.
And I know you and Jeff have now really found a groove in your own unique roles. Talk to us a little bit about how you got to find that groove, working with a co-founder, and maybe talk a little bit about some of those things.
Yeah, happily. So, I mean, firstly, the business would not be where it is right now without the support of Jeff and even the earlier founders at the beginning of our journey and the rest of the team. I can absolutely say this with confidence. I would not be able to pull off what we pulled off without these people on the team. It's not even what I've pulled off. I mean, like it's the dynamic between Jeff and I is actually it's been a good one, but it's had some turbulence because we are so completely different. I'm in a turmoil as it starts off with because I've got an achiever and an enthusiast. And the one is the achiever's kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, making sure you've got structure and everything's in place. And the enthusiast is like, don't put me in a box. I want to diverge and, keep on absorbing new and shiny things, within reason. So, internally, I've got this dynamic that comes out depending on how stressed I am. And you've got Jeff, who's an amazing guy at really focusing on that end goal, motivated by competition, by winning, and setting his sights on that goal and ensuring that everything is aligned to that goal. So, I'm not focused, but my strength is kind of seeing the breadth, honing in a little bit, then seeing the breadth. You're kind of a little bit of a bipolar dynamic between those two. And then, getting to a certain point, quick start, sort of identifying the vision. And then Jeff's absolutely able to do that too. But his strength is really then just closing that final gap, keeping me on track, keeping the team on track, putting the processes in place to make sure that we don't lose sight of what that goal is at the end of the day.
I love that.
So, at times we've been at loggerheads, but
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if you're in a startup, you're going to have some days where you absolutely doubt whether whether you can do anything right. And, you're capable of doing this. And I mean, like there's some dark days. And then having someone that sort of is out of sync with you in terms of, their highs and lows is not just the personality dynamic, but the highs and lows of going along this journey. I'd highly recommend founders find someone that they can, really form a strong relationship with, and you guys can build the business together. I mean, at least that's what I definitely needed.
Totally. In my own experience, founding several, businesses, who is more important than what? Who you start with is far more significant and influential than what you start with. And I couldn't have started any of the companies or exited the companies without the founders that came on the journey with me, And one of the greatest things is what you learn about yourself on that journey, knowing your limitations and being willing to delegate to someone else, that part of you that you're just not good at, right? And I think and when you get it right, it really works. You find that synergy really starts to work. And I've noticed certainly you and Jeff, you seem to be in a really good rhythm there.
Yes.
In working together. Yeah, I really like that. And also, I think you've taken some risks, right? Let's just talk a little bit as we land the plane, as it were. Risk taking, Nick. I mean, what advice do you give to somebody in the whole field of taking risks? Because it seems to be integral with the process.
I don't know. It's so risk taking. I mean, I take risk adjusted decisions, make risk adjusted decisions. But I think you need to be comfortable with uncertainty. There are a bunch of ways that you can become uncomfortable with uncertainty. One is you can have sort of like some really last resort backstops, or you can have a couple of contingency plans so that if, you can work out this is the milestone. If that doesn't achieve, I can pivot quickly. But yes, that's probably one of the things we could have acted faster on. We could have taken more. I don't know. It's interesting because we've taken a lot of risks. So I'm stumbling a bit because we've taken a lot of risks, but I also think that we haven't acted fast enough just because maybe, my risk threshold's been reached. Like we could have, one of the things that I've learned over the last sort of, let's say, year is you really need to be laser focused if you're running a company. And especially as you're growing, and, you could get that messaging right, to know exactly who you're targeting, what that persona is, what the product is, what the features are. And that's something that I think that I could have gotten better at, just because I'm trying to, you could say in part, hedge the risks of picking something that might not work out. In our case, I have a little bit of grace for myself in that the industry that we're in is evolving so fast. And, the institutions and the clients that we're facing, their understanding and what they're looking for is evolving so fast. So we've almost, no, no, you've got to work out whether I'm putting myself grace here. We've had to keep that focus a little bit broader, possibly than, some other industry. I don't know what to name it, but you've really got to get that balance right of making sure that you're not so laser focused that, Anthropic comes and launches module 3 of an accounting platform and you're dead. But not so broad that you can't get a clear vision and explain something clearly to, a PE or VC or an institution or a client. So mixed emotions there. I think we could have been more risky on focus, but we've taken a lot of risks and you just need to be comfortable with them. You just got to be confident that, you'll be quick enough to adapt if you need to.
I think you answered the question really, really well. A couple takeaways from that is be quick to make those decisions because technology is moving on at lightning speed. And, looking back, we wish we'd been quicker to jump in there. Being able 100%. To take risks quicker, I think is and not just risky risks, but thought through risk. But that whole process needs to speed up. Look, I think you guys have taken huge risks. They paid off, most of them anyway. And I think, good entrepreneurs in whatever business, speed to market is really important. Making sure you're good process in the way you deal with your risk taking. Surround yourself with people that are not just yes people, but people that really articulate and challenge your thinking. And building a team that you work very strongly with. I think, you've highlighted all of those points. So you've got a 30-second comment. If you were going to talk to your younger self, we always have this great question. You're going to talk to your younger self starting out, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He probably wouldn't listen to you anyway. But if he would, what advice would you give yourself a couple of years ago?
I think that what steered me in good, steadfast, that being steadfast for me is like that, just that naive optimism. Let's throw in ground in there. Naive, grounded optimism. I think like there's a strength in going into things slightly naively. So embrace that. You're not going to have all the answers. Maybe the quote that I often quote is that if you're not, the word is embarrassed, but if you're not anxious about launching something, you've taken too long. Wow. So you just got to be comfortable with going into something with a solid foundation and seeing where the wind takes you.
Belief. You got to believe in what you're doing. Nick, I'm looking forward to seeing what the future unfolds for Aral and Avant.
Thank you.
I know you're in the cusp of some amazing things, and I think you're about to go into the sky with this stuff. So I want to thank you on behalf of everyone else listening on being so open and talking to us about your journey. We wish you all the best. See you soon.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. Cheers.